Marwari, right?
I'm a Marwari, yes.
Yeah, that's why food and Marwaris have to go like super hand in hand.
World stage to be showcasing Indian food like this is very exciting.
You also bring in a lot of talent from all parts of the country and even internationally. Tell us a little more about.
But maybe that wedding you did, you should use that as a case study.
I-
that there are a lot of creative people in my team and they naturally just happen to be women. But what we really want to do is more of the curated events.
Don't tell us what you want. Tell us what you don't want.
Exactly.
You know,
Feel
when I
this.
retire, I'm going to write a book, because there's so many stories.
We're opening a bar soon. I mean, it's my husband's pet project.
No, storytelling's big in
It's
decor,
become so
food.
big. I love live counters.
Welcome to the Wedding Podcast. And today's episode is going to be about food curation and the food experience, the entire culinary experience that happens in weddings, which is just growing each day. And the benchmark that people are raising for themselves to do this differently is, beyond imagination. The guest today that we have, if I have to introduce her thoroughly, I think I'll need the whole episode. Because her milestones are getting better and bigger each year. She is achieving a lot. She is, I would say, the true example of an Indian entrepreneur woman who's made a mark for herself globally and made the country proud. She wears many hats. She runs restaurants. She has a very high-end catering setup. And we'd like to hear from her what else is she doing. So I'm introducing to you Aditi Dugar.
I'm so excited to be here, and what an amazing initiative and platform.
And you need to tell us your journey, because I didn't want to put all that in my introduction, but we want to hear it from you, all of it, because I know you moved from finance to this. Like, how did all this happen?
That's the boring stuff. We want to hear all the wedding scoop first.
Yeah. But tell us.
Yeah, so I think that really it's been an accidental, literally a happy accident to fall into the food space.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I wanted to be from a doctor to a tennis player. I got into the finance world, and then here I am as a restaurateur and foodpreneur. And it's been a journey. I think that for me, anything I set out to do, I always set a vision board for myself. And it's always been like, wanting to work with the best or, get mentored by the best and then be the best.
That's amazing. That's amazing. A few things that you said. One is you got into this by default. I got into weddings by default. So, that's quite a similarity
Yeah.
we share.
Those are the best happy mistakes.
I think so. We did not plan it,
Yes.
but, and then you just come with this whole passion and you're making it different and you're making a mark for yourself.
And I think when you come from the unknown, like you don't mind the failure and the risks,
Yeah.
and you're ready to, just ready to explore.
But tell us more about what was first, because was it Sage and Saffron? Guys, just to tell you, Sage and Saffron is one of the most leading catering company, but they do things very exclusively. They do things very differently. And Aditi, of course, started it. My question to you, was Sage and Saffron that took birth first, or was it Mask?
Sage and Saffron. Sage and Saffron was founded with my mother.
Okay.
In fact, I had a British partner, and hence the name Sage and Saffron, because we started out as a vegetarian catering company from my mum's home kitchen.
Oh.
And I had a British partner who kind of, I expanded or collaborated with her to expand my customer or client database, because for me, I think like being from a finance field, it was always about scale and to see that the numbers always excited me. So, again, it was a really accidental meeting with this person I partnered with. Her name was Flora Hillary. She used to run a concept called Green Hill Kitchen in Bombay. And we met at an event that where I was leading the event as a chef, and I was doing a Thai sit-down dinner, and she was my sous chef in the kitchen.
Oh.
And then kind of we hit it off and decided that we could expand, our catering possibilities by collaborating where she'd never eaten vegetarian food, like, how I was curating, and also like it gave me a better client base to cater to, because she was catering at all the consulates and, like the expat community in Bombay. So from a very early stage in my career, I always knew that growth was not just about yourself, but to collaborate and to, share that success with other people was more joyous. And so we kind of decided to come together, and hence the name Sage and Saffron. In fact, when I started out with my mother, the company was called Urban Gourmet India Private Limited, which is now the parent company, and all the brands are under that. But so I started Urban Gourmet with my mom in 2012, and Sage and Saffron was founded in 2014.
So you're a Marwari, right?
I'm a Marwari, yes.
Yeah, that's why food and Marwaris
Yes.
have to go like super hand in hand. And I think the culture in
It's
a
almost in our DNA.
I know. I mean, the culture in a Marwari home. Sometimes, when I go for these wedding meetings, Aditi, and just eating their home food, I'm like, if this is what they're doing at home, I don't know what we're going to do at the
It's
wedding.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard because, exactly, sometimes, even when I curate or I see menus, I'm just like, even now, because I've professionalized everything, I'm always comparing or always telling my team, oh my God, I can do this better at home. I'm sure being professionals, you can do this better. So it's always a comparison, or I think it's just how we've been brought up.
And as a chef, what's the closest cuisine or the best that it's your favorite?
I love Thai food, and I love Marwari food.
Yeah, yeah. So, one thing we've realized, and people who've not been to Mask Labs in Mumbai, you're missing something. You have to have a meal there, because you'll really understand the kind of curation Aditi and her team does. You all work so much with the Indian procure so differently. I mean, I've tasted vegetables which otherwise we will not want to look at, but in your kitchen when you all do it. So when do the time for innovation and creating these recipes, what's the process?
So I think that very early on, when we opened Mask in 2016, we realized that it wasn't worthwhile chasing produce that was coming we had to
Internationally.
and it was all frozen, right?
Yeah.
If we have to serve caviar, the tins are coming frozen,
Yeah.
the truffles are coming frozen. I mean, what's the joy of serving frozen produce and kind of obviously being in with the trend, but
Yeah.
it's not satisfactory eating when you know that it's not fresh,
Yeah.
it's not in our backyard.
Yeah.
And I think that that was kind of the birth of the idea to really, when we started talking also to, or, when I was in San Sebastian, I saw just being so fascinated by the expanse of the produce or the terroir that they were working with in that region, and putting that, showcasing that on the table and on the plate. I was just so fascinated that something had to be done about, if I had to open a fine dining restaurant in India, it had to spotlight Indian ingredients, and we needed to put that on a global map. And it really started with a humble farm visits, or just R&D, and seeing what kind was growing in our backyard, what our grandmothers ate growing up from the fields, or people will talk about some berry or some fruit that they would eat from a thela in Calcutta, and really just connecting the dots through ingredients initially. And that became so exciting as part of our R&D or research, where it would be, I'd never travel India the way I did with, kind of finding ingredients for Mask. I'd been to the, the kind of really to the villages in Rampur in Himachal, or going down to Pondicherry to look for Pondicherry chocolate. And I think that we were I mean, I'd proudly say that the restaurant was really creating firsts in so many spaces, and like I think produce was one of them, where we got a chocolatier. Mason and Co has been supplying us chocolate since day one, but I know back in 2015 when I met them, they'd never even thought of producing like a retail or a wholesale bar or a B2B bar. And we were the first restaurant. I was like, how do you get this amazing chocolate? Like, how do you expand this if you don't start supplying to a like-minded restaurant? And I pushed them to send us a wholesale bar, and now they're like one of the biggest B2B suppliers in the country in terms of chocolate to so many restaurants.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
You've kind of opened doors for a lot of other, I would say, vendor chain and, people probably who never saw an opportunity in this.
No, and that one thing, it's like, you achieve one milestone and then you're like, okay, it gives you high to do something else. I remember when we went to Rampur and like we worked with somebody who was working with the agricultural department, and I connected with him and we went to source like large Rampur lemons. And he said, you literally traveled all this way to get these Rampur lemons. Like, how crazy is this? And then with that discovery, we discovered like a plum wine and like so many other exciting produce. And that became like the high and the thrill of changing the menu continues constantly to say, this is what we've discovered or this is what we found, and to showcase that. But obviously over time, the restaurant philosophy has evolved and changed, and it's not just about Indian produce anymore, but it's also about how much this country has to offer in terms of tradition, regions, grandmother's recipes, and really spotlight that in novel ways and through a mask lens.
And the good part is, as a leader, I've seen you always share this credit, or rather give this credit entirely to your team, which is a great, great sign of a great leader. And I think that's where your expansions happen seamlessly. Talking of weddings, when was the time when you first stepped in, and what is the kind of scale and what is the kind of project that you look for in the wedding space?
Here I have to give little credit to Mrs. Tina Ambani, because she got in touch with me for her 25th wedding anniversary. And at that time, I was still catering from a home kitchen. Okay. And she'd eaten my food somewhere, and she said that, it's like such innovative vegetarian food, like I have to give you kudos. And she started comparing me with like veterans in the industry, which was very humbling. And she said, I want you to, do our 25th wedding anniversary. I was like, how many people is it? She said 400. I was like, it's impossible. Like, I have a home set up and there's no way like I can deliver at that level or scale. And even like the way they wanted the station set up, like, they're world travelers and like everything, like she had a vision for how she wanted her celebration to go. And she's like, no, you come meet us. We have so much clarity that you'll be fine. It'll be smooth sailing, and wherever you need help, you need us to import stuff, we'll be happy to kind of play a part, play a big role in this whole curation. And I mean, I literally just took the leap, but after that, like, and the show I put up and the compliments we got, there was no looking back. I was just like,
what year was this?
This was in, I would say, 2016 or 17.
Just before COVID.
Yeah, 16 or 17.
And how's it been post-COVID? Have you all been doing a lot of events?
Like almost like, I think the year we opened Mask, and she'd also heard about Mask, and
yeah.
But
so post-COVID, has this like kind of really taken off for you, the catering division and the weddings and celebrations division?
I think in 2019, when I moved the catering kitchen into its own unit, like, I took that leap of faith. We were already doing a lot of business, but we were always just cramped up in a very tiny space behind the Mask kitchen. And I wasn't giving my team that opportunity to take that risk. But then when I did that in 2019, this is like maybe 8 months before COVID, everything changed. Like, I think also it was so smooth sailing for Mask during COVID, because Sage and Saffron already had the formula of curating experiences, or putting Mask in a box, or doing like, we pivoted on all fronts. And I think the catering service was to thank.
So coming to curation, of course, mask is always a part of your entire curation, but you also bring in a lot of talent from all parts of the country and even internationally. Tell us a little more about how does a client give you a brief? How do you think of it? What do you decide? How do you put the team together?
I think that, like I said, like I think collaboration is really something I believe in, and it's important to share the platform with more people because you're only going to benefit, right? I mean, there's so much learning
Absolutely.
from everybody, from different people's experiences and their cultures, and what they're also their talent that they're bringing to the table, their team experiences. So for me, that when a client gives me a brief, obviously it's so much to do with is the curation limited to something that we can do in-house, or do we collaborate with vendors from across the country? I mean, there's so much talent within our region as well. Or does budgets allow to bring one vendor, or international, like can we bring 5 vendors? I mean, there's a huge cost implication
yeah.
when you're talking about international vendors. It's not only a fee structure, but there is a team you fly down, they have a level of, the way they want to deliver in a kitchen. So everything needs to be amplified and amped up so much more within your
Yeah,
own space.
yeah.
So there is a cost implication. So it's not necessary that every client we're curating is an international chef that we're
You could just
collaborating
do
with.
within
Could
the
be
country.
Within the country, and
I
sometimes
remember you
we're
got
just doing it all
brothers from-
ourselves. Yes.
For one of the weddings,
Yeah.
I remember you getting Brothers Dhaba from
Yeah,
Amritsar.
Exactly. I'd eaten it outside when I went to the Golden Temple, and I've been in touch with them. I was probably the first. Now everybody talks about Brothers Dhaba, but I was probably the first to get Brothers Dhaba during, in fact, this
And to
25th wedding
search for
anniversary
this talent, I
celebration.
remember that one Rajasthani guy who comes and does his special gatta curry or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you all search and how do you remember that, okay, this is...
I mean, I'm not the master of aggregation. I can't claim
Yeah.
that. There are so many people who are probably better than me because they do so many large-scale
lot more,
weddings.
yeah.
They do a lot more. But I think that what we're really good at is definitely finding some peculiar talent. And also, I think that where I can take credit is how Sage and Savvy, everybody can bring a vendor.
Yeah.
But the curation or that special, how we can really get into that detailing and really curating it to the specification of what the client's taste buds are.
True.
Is where I think we really excel.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people bring international chefs, but the way we work with international teams is really to cater it to how we think an Indian audience or the client's palate is. It's not just letting the restaurant just...
and I've seen that it's pretty much very seamless.
And that's really helpful for the restaurants as
yeah.
well, because they don't want to come to India and get bad feedback.
yeah,
They want to
absolutely.
be leaving on a high note. And I think that that really, working very closely
Yeah.
really helps.
So this whole operation of setting up a satellite kitchen for the different, I would say chefs or vendors who come from across
I know
the...
we need to open like a talent management company.
That's true.
also a logistics company.
It's a lot of work, and sometimes I know the health and safety standards are compromised by planners if they've not lived up to the kind of brief you've given. How do you make sure?
I blame the decorators. Food is always given. It's the most important thing in the wedding, but always looked at last in terms of the
Yeah.
setup. Like we're always fighting at a wedding, however well planned. We're always fighting about masking, our back tables,
Yeah.
our setup.
And you're very particular with it. I mean, you're anal about
Yeah.
it.
I go crazy.
Yeah.
And I keep flagging it, and they're like, okay, but the decor is more important at this point than the food. I'm like, no.
The good part is it looks all very seamless, I mean, you definitely put a lot of effort into styling. Let's talk a little bit about this whole food styling thing, I mean, there was this time, you remember when as kids, when we attended weddings, there was good food, but there was this line of buffet, and that's all that we used to go and just keep taking stuff.
Yeah.
But today, the way presentations are made, the way counters are set up, styling is a very, very important part. And what's your take on this whole styling bit?
I think I have to say that I've been very fortunate. At a very early age, I was exposed, and I worked at a floral company called In Water in London. And literally, this was at the age of 16, and I was exposed to going to setups at like Sotheby's and Cartier, and saw we were a little bit, behind what the world was doing in terms of buffet setups and service.
Yeah.
It was far ahead in the West, and I'd seen that. So actually, the USP of Sage and Saffron, I would proudly say, since 2012, is that it really wasn't ever a line of chefing dishes. It was always about food being presented in a unique way, very beautifully, where it was really an eat with your eyes experience.
Yes.
And I would, even if the client didn't have budget, I would offer my services, saying, I'm trained internationally. I can help you, just rearrange
Yeah.
literally your existing stuff in your house,
Yeah.
or even your flowers. Like, you can add an element of a wow factor to the table, and it would change the experience. So I'd been doing that for a long time, of course not at a large scale, but it's very exciting to see how weddings, or how everybody has realized or moved away from, also to realize that
Yeah.
sometimes this just line of food is also so much wastage.
And
it's
yeah, it's a
colossal
lot of wastage, and you lose the taste
and it's
and
become so interesting and so fun that how everybody has gotten so evolved, right from the clients to the planners, everybody in the system has become so evolved. That it's everybody playing a part to say, how do we make this more experiential?
To try and create experiences in hotels is always a challenge, because there are rules. They don't allow, experts like y'all to come in and partner. And it could be challenging. I'm sure you face this. I
Yes.
face this all the time, where we're constantly trying to convince a hotel, because they say we have a full F&B department, and, you got to... I understand the revenue bit. We understand that, there's a certain revenue that they lose out if we get somebody. But there are ways to work around it, And what is your take on this? How would you convince a hotel saying, listen, here we are to do something?
At times I don't blame them, because I'm friends with so many hoteliers, and it is so SOP'd out for them, and it's almost like a gold standard.
Yeah.
And for them to, it's really pushing them out of their comfort zone and their day-to-day training and things. That's so horse blinderish for them that it's difficult for them to understand. When we do a catering setup, we're working with rented tables, and you don't have that level of efficiency that you have working in a hotel kitchen. So I think it's also,
It worries them that...
it worries them.
Yeah.
It worries them that maybe food safety is not being met.
Absolutely.
Or it, when
we work internationally,
Yeah.
I feel international hotels have been a little more welcoming that way.
Correct.
Because they realize that, okay, this is probably the space we can't excel, and to do menus over 3 days and have the Indianness and the kind of variety that the Indian weddings demand for is not typically what they can, live up to with their current setup, especially when we go to resorts and places. So they are more open, but they give us certain norms clearly. You got to give them the HACCP certificate. You got to do the health and safety test for all the cooks and chefs working. The kitchens have to be built in a certain way. I always wonder, why can't we just replicate
because
that?
I think that the cost, sometimes the clients, they've overspent in so many different areas that when it actually comes to the back end that is required for food, it's like they just think that it's okay to do it on just tables and inductions,
Yeah,
and it'll
yeah.
happen. But they aren't really thinking to the last mile of the hygiene and the other things that can go wrong.
And
nobody's
safety,
thinking.
most
I
importantly.
remember we did that wedding with you in Calcutta. The client was so conscious.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
never worked with such a beautifully
Yeah,
set up
yeah.
kitchen in any wedding.
Absolutely.
It also has to come from the client realizing this. So I think only when you get to change the client's mindset will this happen, and we'll be able to work in a more professional manner.
I think we need to educate both the client. We need to also give more confidence to the hotels.
Yes.
And, understand and tell them, I mean, they need to understand, and they need to understand that you're here to complement. A great experience in their hotel or venue is only going to mean a lot more for both of y'all.
But maybe that wedding you did, you should use that as a case study.
With these NDAs in place, so often we can't always show all that we do. But yeah, we did set up a really, really very, very professional kitchen
It
there.
was just amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, my team still talks about that experience. Like, why can't all wedding catering back-end kitchens be set up like this?
I think we are getting there, and I think hotels, I'm hoping after them seeing this kind of show and interacting with all of us at times,
Yeah, just
will be
sometimes
more
the
open.
basics, like,
Yeah.
where can we wash our hands, or
Yeah.
a washing facility? Like, I think, and that's what worries hotels.
I think hotels are
I think
also
we need to change our mindset for them to start feeling confident about allowing outside vendors.
Yeah, and now as the hotels are bringing up new hotels, each chain is working on expanding, within India, with Wed in India being, of course, a very important factor. They should build hotels with that kind of infrastructure to begin
Exactly.
with.
So
Like
it's-
keep that kitchen. Some of these hotels in Thailand, they have that full-on catering
Yes.
kitchen near the banquet hall, which is just given out to the team
Amazing.
that comes.
I mean, yeah, Thailand knows hospitality like no one else does.
Yeah, that's true. So tell us, how does an interested client or a planner approach Sage and Saffron? What is the kind of work you'd like to pick up, and how many weddings do you really want to pick up? I mean, give us some idea so that people know how to kind of connect with you.
Honestly, we love our small events also so much
Yeah.
that we're not ready to give it all up to just
The large numbers.
to grow to the large numbers. And with the large numbers, of course, it's a huge, a huge bank. It feels very happy. The bank balance feels very happy with every big event. But we lose out on like upsetting a lot of our like clients, where we can really get into that bespoke curation, and that joy of really preparing that nuanced
Yeah.
food goes away sometimes with large scale stuff.
I agree.
So hence we really want to choose our clients.
Yeah.
We don't want to be involved in every large scale event that there is to kind of dish out food.
Yeah.
That I don't think we will ever want to get there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we're not even aspiring to get
Yeah.
there. I think there are already enough people doing
True.
that. We don't want to even
Yeah.
compete. But what we really want to do is more of the curated events. We've been involved in at least, I would say now, earlier it used to be maybe one wedding a year. Now I would say it's gone to maybe 5 or 6 weddings a
Yeah.
year. And I'm happy to take it up to maybe 8 or 10,
Yeah.
but that's
That's
probably
the kind.
it.
Your prerequisite is your clients have to understand food
And
really well.
yes, and they need to have a really clear brief of what
Yeah.
they don't want.
Yes,
I
yeah.
think-
I always tell people, don't tell us what you want. Tell us what you don't
Exactly.
want.
It's really important.
helps.
And with more and more that, you literally you become part of that everything, all the minutest details of that family. It's almost you become that family member for that 2 or 3 month engagement.
Yeah.
That it's very important to, it's like it's amazing, how well we have become such great people managers.
Yeah, yeah.
We're better than like psychiatrists.
I always say when
feel
I
this.
retire, I'm going to write a book, because there's so many stories. There's different kinds of...
No, but the patience,
Yeah.
my patience level, like somebody could be, and it's a good thing. Like
Yeah.
I think that you and me both, I can say, are very good with feedback.
Yeah.
And to be in this industry and to really make a mark, you have to take every feedback and work on it. Not
That's
just
true.
take it with a pinch of salt, but actually work on it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. There's so much happening in the food space. What do you think is going to be like the next trend? What's really coming up, you think? Like, what is it that people are more inclined towards?
I'm seeing this more and more, like whether it is also the scale of, say, the largest family in India, or it is any kind of scale, but I'm seeing this more and more where they want the bride and groom story entwined into like the food story. Like, it has to be, it's becoming so much more personalized. It's like, I've eaten a favorite meal here, how do we recreate it? Or this is my famous, most
My childhood
loved falafel
memory.
shop in
Yeah.
some quaint place in Europe, but like how do we
Yeah.
create that falafel bar experience? Even if we can't bring them,
Yeah.
how do we bring that into
Yeah.
that personalized experience into the curation?
No, storytelling's big in
It's
decor,
become so
food.
big. I mean, people are writing their story on their lehengas. So
Really? I haven't seen that
I mean,
yet.
Kresha Bajaj has been doing this
Oh, is it?
for years, where she does the whole story on the lehenga. It's getting now. I think it's getting weaved into the
Oh, wow.
food like never before.
That's amazing. Aditi, in the wedding space, there's so many women, even at least in the planning space, I see. But there was a time when I used to see a lot of male chefs, but now there's so many women. And I'm sure you have a very women-heavy team too.
Yes.
When they travel, when they have to work late hours, there's always this thing about their safety, their security. What's your approach with that? And also, how encouraging is it to see so many women chefs? Like, where do these talent come from? How do you work on getting the best talent?
So I think also being, when I entered the industry, like you rightly said, was such a male-dominated industry that for me, even while I was building my team, it came very naturally to me to also want to have more women in my
Yeah,
team, that
yeah.
it became a more safe and comforting environment for myself.
Yes.
Where I could like discuss my grievances with another person,
Yeah.
or like, made those team members almost my confidant
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So it had to do a lot with also how I am as a person, and I've really grown my team as almost like an extended family.
Yes.
They are my extended family, not almost. And so when I go to work, it's also that it's a safe place for myself.
Yeah.
And I have always encouraged to get women on top, whether it's, Mirelle, who's our restaurant manager at Mars, started off not even being from this industry, is now the general manager of the restaurant.
Oh, lovely.
It's been a 7-year journey for her, but
Yeah.
and I would say she's one of the most fierce general managers in the industry today.
Yeah.
Like everybody is like wanting to take a page of her book.
Yeah.
And she's young, and there's so much more that she can achieve. And so even like with my bakery project, like I have a woman chef helming the kitchen, or now I'm starting a pizza project, I have a woman chef helming it there. So, I mean, I'm trying to create these positions, but not like I have anything against male chefs and,
Of course, but
I mean,
there's so much opportunity, and I think that's great because I see a lot of women chefs now.
and I think that when you create that environment, even when we travel, we create that buddy
Yeah.
system where they are rooming together,
Yeah.
and they are always coordinating with each other to make sure that each one are safe, even if they're having a good time.
True.
Even if they're staying in a, kind of sharing the hotel with other male chef, it's that they have created because they're more than one person,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
think the more you multiply that
It helps.
that space, it helps.
That's lovely, and that's really encouraging, and quite heartening to hear that.
Yeah, and I always love empowering my team, and I think also because luckily, like for me, that I'm also working in a very creative space, even
Yeah.
though it's food, that there are a lot of creative people in my team, and they naturally just happen to be women.
What's next for Aditi? I mean, you just mentioned something about pizza that caught my
Yeah.
attention.
We're opening a bar soon. I mean, it's my husband's pet project. He's been always, before Mask, he actually wanted to open a bar. So his dream's finally coming true.
Oh,
That's
lovely.
slated to open this year.
In Mumbai?
In Bombay.
Okay.
In Mumbai, and the same mill as Mask.
Oh, lovely.
We're kind of taking over. My kids keep joking it's going to be a Dugar mill soon. So, and then we're also expanding the bakery and doing pizza under the same brand.
Do you want to quickly just tell us all your brands? Because listen, I've lost track of some of these now. You've got Mask, you've
I have
got...
I have Mask Lab,
Yeah.
a Sage and Saffron, 27 Bakehouse, a bar coming soon, and Circle 69, which I co-own with Sangeeta Kathiwara
Oh, which
at
is
Kathiwara
the
City
yeah.
House. And then I operate Seesaw for Reliance Brands, and I'm also chief advisor for Araku Coffee in India.
Coffee is a big trend.
It is. It's huge
And now
it's
it's
on the
being
rising.
incorporated like how in weddings. Everybody wants like a coffee station next to the bar.
Yes. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And also coffee, it's so nuanced, and there's so much you can do with coffee, right? It's not just making straight up. It's not just a straightforward coffee bar anymore. You can do cold brews, you can do nitro brews, you can infuse different flavors into your coffee. You can do coffee mixology.
Yeah.
You can do coffee cocktails. The space is so broad.
That's so amazing. There's so much we can keep talking about food. I mean, it's really making me
Coffee just as a product as well in chocolate now,
Yeah.
people are using as a recycled thing to do it as a dyeing, and like this it's like limitless.
Yeah. It's been an amazing conversation with Aditi, and we can keep talking about food till I get hungry, but we've had a lot of food
It's almost lunchtime.
Yeah. It's a lot of food for thought of how you can curate your big day and make the culinary experience quite a highlight. It's always been like that. People, what they remember of a wedding is food, and to a large extent. I mean, of course, everything has to be in the right balance, but food is a great memory they take back from your wedding. So you have to pay a lot of attention to that. But Aditi, we are not done yet. I have a rapid fire for you. So
I hate rapid fires.
please, you'll do this for me, I know.
I'm
that.
very spontaneous as a person. I can get on a flight. I can like jump off a cliff. Like literally, somebody tells me pack your bags, we'll fly now. I'll be ready in the next
These are
hour.
damn easy for
But-
you. You'll sail through
But
this.
rapid fire is not my thing.
But I'm yet gonna do it. You can't convince me out of this. The most unique dish you've curated for a wedding.
Oh my God. We've done so many, but I have to say, once, when truffle was taking over
Yeah.
every station in this country, everything with truffle oil and
Yeah.
douse it with more truffle and white truffle and fresh truffle and have truffle as a display. One client pushed us to say, okay, how do we up this whole truffle game? So we actually did a truffle pizza and then covered it with gold foil.
Oh my God, truffles
So it
anyway
was-
at the price of
I
gold.
think our truffle stations have been very, very creative.
That's amazing. Live counters or sit downs?
I love live counters.
Yeah.
I mean, sit downs obviously have its place and it's an experience, but live counters, you really get to interact with the guests. You get to see
That's
their
true.
reaction in that
Yeah.
moment. You're able to tweak
Yeah.
as they're eating.
Yeah, it's a
it's
lot
fun.
of fun,
It's
yeah.
a lot of fun.
Best food and drink pairing.
I'm a teetotaler, but I have to say, yeah, like a wine paired dinner
Is always fun.
is always amazing.
Your go-to dish for a last-minute request.
Bata. I keep saying this. Burrata. Anything with burrata, avocado, truffle, or asparagus.
Easiest. Your guilt pleasure.
Cheese and chocolate.
Your favorite food festival or culinary event.
I love going to, like, I remember, like, yeah, I'll be, every time we travel in India as well, I love going to all, like, the regional festivals.
Yeah.
Like, I've been to the one in Himachal, and it was mind-blowing, and I found, like, somebody there who was, like, an award-winning, like, makke ka roti, sarson ka saag vendor. Then I, in fact, used them for one of my events. And this year, I'm very excited about the Hornbill Festival.
Oh, lovely. And I think in Mumbai, there's only the fish thing that happens in Warsaw.
That's done by the Kohli
Yeah,
women.
yeah.
And a friend of mine, because she's been working with the community a lot, so she started like a Kohli kitchen kind of IP with them, and I went to one of her events, and it was all these Kohli women cooking, recipes from their home. It was
You
absolutely
must
amazing.
curate a food festival. I mean, we must.
Yes, we must do a lot of things together.
Your favorite wedding dessert, besides the wedding cake, of course, wedding cake is not your favorite, but what's your favorite wedding dessert?
recently we did this. In fact, it's not a dessert that we've curated, but it was one of my most favorite desserts to have at a wedding. They worked with this restaurant from Singapore called Claudine, and they have a dessert called it's almost a blend between a profiterole and a Paris Brest and a choux pastry, and it was filled with like a vanilla creme inside. It was just unbelievable. Like, it was just unbelievable.
I'm picturing in my
and like
head.
as they pour the chocolate sauce, everything like melts. The center melts. It was so decadent.
Oh my God, the way you describe food is also excellent. With this, we are done. It wasn't tough at all. Thank you so much, Aditi. I hope you've enjoyed being
I've
with
loved
us.
being here, and more power to you. And this is gonna rock.
Thank you so much. Hope you guys have enjoyed this episode as much as I have. I enjoy all my episodes. I hope y'all are liking it. Please do like, share your comments, what you'd like to hear in the future episodes. And do not forget to subscribe to the Wedding Podcast.